Hello, everyone. I'm David Young, founder of Drone Launch Academy. Welcome to this free training. You are here to learn about the number one niche that has created more six-figure drone businesses than any other niche, than any other category. So if you're excited about learning about that, that's what we're going to be talking about today. If you have any questions as we go through this training, there should be a spot around here where you can leave a comment, submit a question, and we will do our best to get that answered. So thanks so much for coming. I just want to let you know you are in the right place if, number one, you're interested in finding new ways to make money with your drone. Maybe you have a drone, maybe you don't have a drone, maybe you just have heard about, hey, people make money with drones, how does this work? Or maybe you're out there with your drone, potentially flying for some real estate agents or taking pictures for businesses, something like that, and you're thinking, what are some other ways I can make money with my drone? We're going to talk about that. Number two, I basically just said this, you're doing real estate, traditional photography, something like that, and maybe that type of work frustrates you, maybe you don't love the clients you're working with, or maybe number three, like working with data and helping people, and you know drones can be used in that space, in that sphere, and you want to know more about it. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So things we'll be discussing today. Four things. Number one, I'm going to tell you the number one niche that I mentioned that creates more or has created more six-figure drone businesses in the last 5 years than any other niche. It's this one thing, this old school technology or method that has been made way easier with drones, and since drones have been more popular and introduced, we're going to talk about how that works, right? So number two, how it works. We're going to talk about that technique, and I'm going to just basically teach you real quick how that works, how the drones do what they do to allow you to work with clients or work for your employer and help them out a lot. Number three, there's a guy named Root you're going to learn about here in a second. He's a very successful person in this niche, has made hundreds of thousands of dollars doing it, and he shared with me 3 secrets that he has implemented to make a six-figure business out of this, multiple six figures per year for him, and he's going to share those with you. And then number four, how you can do that too, how you can implement that, how you can take some of these things that we are going to learn here today and how you can implement them in your business to hopefully make yourself more marketable, go get more money, get a promotion, whatever it is that you're looking to do with drones that can help you accelerate your career and your business. So if you're ready to dive in, let's do it now that you know what to expect. Who am I? I mentioned before, I'm David Young, founder of Drone Launch Academy, and this other guy here that you see is Root Patel, and I'll dive into him more later and his story and his background and why he's important. But a little bit about me. If you've never heard of Drone Launch Academy, we are a business that started back in 2016, back when the Federal Aviation Administration announced that they were going to be coming out with this test called the Unmanned Aircraft General Exam. But it allowed you to get your remote pilot certificate, which allows you to fly drones commercially. Big roundabout way of saying test you have to take to get a certificate so you can fly a drone for money or for your employer or whatever. My background is in accounting and aviation, kind of a weird niche combo there, but I went to school for aviation first, got my pilot's license, then switched and went to school for accounting. I ended up working for the FBI for about 8 years, doing accounting work, budgeting, finance, forensic accounting, a bunch of different stuff. Started getting into drones while I was there, had been talking to their drone teams a bit, started getting into drones myself. I got my FAA Advanced Ground Instructor certificate, and then I started helping people with drones, with drone businesses on the side. That's when I started Drone Launch Academy, and it just built and grew, and I eventually left the FBI to pursue this full time. So now we work with dozens of different expert instructors to create content, to create online courses that specifically help people in using drones for business and commercial purposes. The thing I'm really most excited about, or maybe most proud of, is that this number right here, as of this recording, maybe this was a few days ago, we have trained over 27,000, almost 28,000 drone pilots that have gone through a paid course and have invested in themselves to further their drone career. So really excited about that and love always seeing people's results. Okay, let's dive in. That's a little bit about me just so you have the groundwork there. What is the niche that's responsible for the most six-figure drone businesses in the past 5 years? It's an old technique that was created back in the 1800s. I was trying to look this up specifically, but there's some mentions of it in like 1840 when they kind of thought of the concept, and then in the later 1800s they started putting it to use. Well, it was actually used during World War I and World War II to help the military create maps of strategic battlegrounds of where they wanted to position their troops. So it was used as a map making tool, and maps have been made forever. This technique is called photogrammetry, and you may have heard of that, but if not, I'll explain exactly what photogrammetry is. There's a bunch of different definitions, but one I found that I think most succinctly sums it up is it's the science and technology of obtaining accurate accurate measurements from 2D photographs. Again, that might sound complex, but essentially it's just taking a ton of pictures from an aerial perspective. I guess it could be from the ground perspective too, but when we're talking about it, we're talking about it from an aerial perspective, and you're going to combine all those photographs to create basically one giant data set, one giant photograph that is corrected and put together in such a way that all of the measurements are extremely accurate and you can measure on it. Because in a traditional photograph, if you flew up really high, there's some perspective distortion and it doesn't allow you to accurately measure vertically or horizontally things that are on the ground. And we're going to talk about why that's important here. Let me just explain briefly. I have this diagram. We've got our ground right here and we got a building. And I put two drones in the air. This is the same drone. We'll just say it's taking pictures at two different perspectives. The first picture it takes, we'll say, is like this. So it's going to get this part of the ground in the picture. Then it'll fly to its new location and it'll take a picture like this. I want a little bit wider because these pictures need to overlap right here. And what it does is it'll do this over and over again of the ground, and then it'll fly back and it'll take more of those pictures again. And then there's going to be software that will take all of these photos and it'll look for all these common points in the overlapping sections, and it'll stitch those photos together in a computer program and allow you to have one really high resolution and very accurate map. And so it adjusts everything so that all the distances are exactly correct, down to even sometimes as small as a fraction of a centimeter. And if you do it enough and you get different angles too, it'll allow you to also measure vertically, and you can build 3D models. You can do all sorts of different really cool stuff, and you get an actual accurate representation of what's on the ground, but you get a digital version of it. And so here's an example. This is a photo from Google Earth or Google Maps satellite view. This was of a construction site that we looked at, and you can see, you can zoom in. It's decent quality, but it's a little fuzzy, right? That's Google Earth. That's from a satellite, and that was actually done using the same kind of photogrammetry principles, but from a satellite view. If you do that with a drone and you create something called an orthomosaic image, it then creates something like this. Whoa, cool. So you can see this is where it's overlaid, right? This is the old Google satellite data down here, and then we've flown it with a drone, created an orthomosaic image to get up-to-date status of what's on the ground. And then in software tools, you can overlay things like these property boundaries. It's all referenced with our latitude and longitude, so we know exactly where stuff is. These red lines here are measurements that we've been making. We can measure the area of these ponds to see how they change over time. We can get the status of all of these different construction things by lot. There's just so many different things you can do once you have that accurate orthomosaic imagery. If someone asked us, hey, what's the width of this road to be within 1 inch? We could go in the software, you could pull it up, you can measure precisely what it is from here to here, and it'll tell you that, and you have a ton of great insights. So that is photogrammetry in a nutshell. You can also create 3D models. See, these were used creating photogrammetry. You can get the volume of certain stockpiles. You can create a 3D model rendering of a building, so you can do inspections, whatever, right? There's tons of stuff. Here are just some of the ways that photogrammetry is being used right now, right? There is engineering, mining, construction. They use it for forensic and crime scene to, hey, somebody get in a car crash, there's a shooting, you can do a orthomosaic or 3D model of that area. Now you have the actual distances and the condition preserved forever with, you can say, hey, here's how far the bullet flew. Here's all this other stuff. Surveying, agriculture, land management, environmental studies, and archaeology. That could be thought of the same way as forensics. Emergency management. Anything where you need a digital representation of the real world is where you can utilize photogrammetry. So now that leads me to this guy, Root Patel. We talked about him, right? Who is Root Patel? Well, he is the president of a company called Voyager Industries. And as you can see here, nation's leading aerial service provider for energy, agriculture, and infrastructure companies. And what he does is he uses photogrammetry, among other things, to do a lot of mapping of areas, to do inspections, emergency response. We can see his numbers here. He's mapped over 1,100 miles of land. He's inspected over 14,000 assets, which are just buildings, cell towers, things like that. And he's had 6 emergency response events like hurricanes, different disaster areas. And so why do we care about Root? Well, Root has partnered with us. He's been on our podcast. He's created some courses with us, and he's kind of our mapping pro. But let me tell you a little bit about Root's story. So Root was born here in India, up in this region. He grew up there. He had applied for a visa when he was a little kid. His parents did it for him basically right after he was born to come to the U.S. because they have some family in the United States. Well, Root has always been into technology and drones, and he was awarded like top 40 for innovation when he was just entering college. Well, he dropped out of college and then flew to the United States to Florida. It happened to be the same city where I live, which is how we met. He had some family here. When he moved to Florida, he went to work for the drone company of the world, Dairy Queen. He actually had some family that owned a Dairy Queen, and he's like, you know what? I just need a job. I need to save up some money. So he worked at Dairy Queen, and he also worked at a warehouse for like pharmaceutical supplies. So he worked at both of these jobs and worked on saving up some money. I think he saved like 10 grand. He bought a drone and he started getting into the drone industry. He actually worked with another company kind of as an apprentice doing drones in real estate. He did that for a while, but then realized after a bit that it's maybe not what he wanted to do, right? He's like, it's cool. We're doing marketing, taking pictures for real estate agents, but he always had a hankering to solve bigger problems, tackle larger issues, to really hit something a little more complicated. And he loved data and engineering and all that stuff. So this hurricane hit in 2017, Hurricane Irma, right in Florida. As you can see, this was a real hurricane. It came up right through there, hit Lakeland, which is right in the center, right about here. This is where I live and where Root's from. Well, when Hurricane Irma happened, it jacked up tons of roofs and caused a lot of damage in our area and the surrounding area. Well, Root had saved up his money and he bought a Inspire drone. This is a pretty expensive drone. We'll talk more about that later. And he started helping companies with roof inspections and started using drones for mapping purposes and got into that world a lot more. And that's where he really, really took off and fell in love with it. And since then, now we're in 2022, and Root started his company called Voyager Engineering. And now he works with tons of companies. We already listed off his credentials above and all the different things he does. And he's turned it into a multiple six-figure business where he's done really, really awesome things. Okay, so why does that matter for you? Why you're like, cool, Dave, that's great about Root, but why do I care? Well, like I mentioned, Root has been one of our instructors and he's been on our podcast. And in the course of that, he has shared with me through talking to him, I said, hey, Root, tell me how you did what you did, or tell me what are the most important things that if someone else was in the drone world or thinking about drones that they would need to know if they want to end up like you, right? Like boil it down for me. So we really worked and he narrowed it down to just 3 things that he wanted to share. So I'm going to share those with you now. Those are Root's 3 secrets to his 6-figure drone mapping, modeling, photogrammetry business. So let's dive in. Secret number 1 is focus on these types of problems and you won't have to compete on price. And I'll explain what these is in a second. I'm just going to leave you hanging because that's kind of useless just leaving it like that. When you focus on problems that have a bigger impact that other people cannot solve, you don't have to compete on price. And this is a common complaint I get with people who maybe already have drone businesses and are already in the drone industry. They always call it the race to the bottom. They said, oh, it's just a race to the bottom. I can't get any work. People just want to go to the lowest bidder. And without fail, every time I hear someone say this, these people that are saying this are going after jobs that really anybody can do, and they're really not solving a big problem for someone. They're not bringing a lot of value other than saying, hey, I can throw my drone in the air and take some pictures. Well, taking pictures alone, basically anyone can do as long as you have the license and the equipment to be able to do it. You're not really distinguishing yourself or separating yourself from the pack at all. So you have to not be intimidated to go out there and find bigger problems to solve, because the bigger problem you solve, the more impact you have, the more valuable that you become, and the more money you make, either as an employee or as a service provider to a business. I mean, that seems like common sense, but a lot of people don't think about that and then go and take action on that. So you have to learn something beyond just being able to fly the drone and take some pictures. You have to figure out a skill that you can acquire that other people don't have, but that people need. And in this context, that skill is going to be knowing how photogrammetry works, how mapping works, and then how to go out there and create insights from that data that you're getting. So once you know how to do that, you can speak to clients or your boss, because not a lot of people know about it. And so as you hear different problems that come up, people aren't going to assume, oh, I can do a drone and use mapping and modeling and create an orthomosaic image. Like, they're not going to know that stuff. But if you know that stuff, you can hear about their problem, and we're going to have stories about this later. You can hear about their problem and then go, you know what? My drone, I can take it out and I can do this, and we can create these reports or these types of products to solve this problem. And they're going to go, oh, well, that's cool. And there's not other people really coming to them with those solutions. Therefore, you're not a commodity anymore, and it's not a race to the bottom. You can do your pricing in direct proportion to the problem you're solving, not your pricing in relation to competing with a sea of other people who are also willing to do it for the lowest amount, which is what you get into a lot of times in other areas. So let me tell you about a little story, right, about Root and how he's done this, and we'll have a couple more Root stories in here as well. But Root had been working doing roofing inspections and working with other people, and he kept expanding and growing and trying to get into more areas. Well, through connections that he had made in those jobs, he was put in touch with a very large mining company. And as he just talked to them and he listened to their problems and listened to, hey, what are you guys working on? What are you guys doing? He was reaching out to them about something else, and another portion of their company heard about him and wanted to talk to him too. And they said, hey, hey, our drone team, we invested all this money in drones, but we don't know how to do this. We don't know how to really use our drone for this thing. And what they have is they're a large mining company, and they have these things called drag lines. I'm going to put it here, drag lines. They're giant excavators. I mean, you can see how massive these things are. Like, these are people, and this is just the bucket. Like, this is a person, and this is the bucket. They're these huge, huge bucket excavators that have chains, and they can cost up to $100 million. That's like this many zeros for one of these excavators. Look at, this is like a bulldozer right here, and look how big this thing is compared to that. It's huge. These are used in these mining companies, and they have a bunch of them, and when they go to bring one down to inspect it, they have to be inspected every 6 weeks. And when they go to take one down to inspect it, this company loses out on hundreds of thousands of dollars of production just to have this thing down for an inspection. So the more they can have this thing operating all the time, the more money they make. So now Root sees, oh, hey, if I can reduce the amount of downtime, that increases their revenues by tons and tons of money. Therefore, I can charge a lot more. So let's say for a real estate photography or video job, may pay you anywhere from, let's say, $200 to $1,200, and you're doing photographs, video, a bunch of stuff. And I'm not trying to hate on real estate stuff. There's a lot of people who love that work and can do it and are very successful with it, and that's fine. But some people, they just don't enjoy that necessarily creative side of things. They like more of the data and engineering, which is like Root. So he gets in there and he listens to their problems. He said, you know what? I could create 3D models of your drag lines using photogrammetry techniques with my drone. I could get a team together. We could look at how it needs to be inspected. We can narrow in on precise points that need to be fixed or inspected without taking the whole thing apart, because you have a really accurate 3D model. And then that way you can just take it down, fix what needs to be fixed, and put it back, and really reduce your downtime. So now he is able to charge $14,000 to $19,000 per inspection. And think about this. They have to have one inspected every 6 weeks, and they have like a dozen of them. So this is turning into a very, very lucrative thing just because Root focused on solving bigger problems, and he had the knowledge to bring to the situation to be able to figure out, hey, here's how I can help. So that leads us actually to our next secret and another story. Secret number 2 from Root was K is greater than E. And I was like, what in the world does that mean, Root? He said, knowledge is greater than equipment. And this is another thing I hear all the time from drone pilots is, David, I'd love to get into this niche, but I just need to buy this drone. Anytime a new drone comes out, they think, you know what, if I just get this Mavic 3 Pro, then I'll have clients coming to me. Or if I just get this or that. And it's true that if you do have good equipment, that can definitely help you out on a job. However, it is not more important than the knowledge that you can bring with that equipment. So the person who has the knowledge and not as nice of equipment, who can figure out how to solve that problem, will always win over the person who has really nice gear, but doesn't necessarily know the best way to use it or how to get the best results from it or how to do the best editing or the best analysis or whatever, right? Knowledge is greater than equipment. And I'll tell you a story to illustrate this point. So Root, let's flash back to when he was just starting out doing roof inspections for people right around Hurricane Irma. I told you he had saved up about $10,000. I think he dropped about $5,000 to $6,000 on an Inspire drone. And at the time, I think those were 5 to 6 with the lenses and all that stuff, right? He's like, I'm gonna get some nice equipment so I can do these inspections. Well, he's flying around doing these inspections and he crashed his drone. Boom, explosion, right? Drone breaks. He's like, crap, I don't have really any more money, because I think he'd only saved up 10 grand and he was using it for like living expenses and whatever else he had going on. He didn't have enough money to buy another one, but he did have enough money to buy like an entry level one. I think it was like $900. It was a Mavic, not as nice of a drone at all, but he was able to take that $800 or $900 used Mavic, which is more of like an entry level. It's a nice drone, but it's more entry level, but anybody can go buy that drone that's got $800 or $900. He was able to take that and turn it into $20,000 worth of work because he had the knowledge of how to do the work, how to solve people's problems, how to take that information he was collecting from the drone and turn it into something that was valuable to people, right? So he turned $900 into 20 grand with his knowledge. So if you're telling yourself, oh, I just need to buy a better drone and then people will want me. It's not true. Level up your knowledge first, level up understanding how you can help people. And another thing too, you don't have to have, you might think, oh, I've got to have all these certifications and I can't go out and do a survey job because I'm not a licensed surveyor. I'm not saying that you should hold yourself out to be a surveyor, but here's another example. Root talked to a construction company. And again, he was trying to find out their problems, how he could solve them, and said, well, hey, we need a survey of all this land before we start building. They're building a hotel. And we need a survey of this land. They said, can you do that? And he said, well, I'm not a licensed surveyor. It's like, but I'll get it done. I'll figure out how to do it for you. And they're like, great. If you can do that for us with a drone, we'd love it. So instead of Root going, oh, I just can't do this job because I'm not a licensed surveyor, he said, no, I remember I met a surveyor at a conference. Let me call that guy up and see if he'd want to partner on this project. So he calls up the surveyor and says, hey, I got a job, construction company. They want to survey. I'm I'm going to collect the data with my drone. Will you partner with me to review my results and sign off on it if everything looks good? Surveyor says, sound great to me. I don't have to do much work. Doesn't have to get out there with a total station and spend all his time doing this stuff. So Root goes over, collects the data, does everything, puts the information together, sits with the surveyor. Surveyor does his thing, verifies all the measurements, gets it how they need it, puts his stamp on it. Root charges him like, $400, and then is able to bill the client much more because Root did all the other work, and boom, he's landed a job. Now he has a relationship with that construction company, can do progress updates and all these other things for them. But he didn't just say, oh, since I don't have the equipment or the certification, now I can't do that. No, be creative, use your knowledge of how drones can help to then do the job or partner with others, right? So that's just another aspect to think about as you're doing this. Okay, secret number 3 is educate, and this happens. The drone industry is new. It's compared to other industries, it's very new. And a lot of people, like I mentioned before, have no idea how drones can help. So one of the best ways to grow your business and to get business is once you have that knowledge, you have to educate in a helpful way. And I'll share some stories to help illustrate this point. One from me and one from Root. So I'm sitting there, we're actually planning out a mapping and modeling course that we were creating. And I was sitting there with somebody on my team, and we're like, you know what? We need sample projects. What would be some good ways we can show people how to use the drone to do the mapping? Can we talk to some construction companies and do some live stuff with them? Or is there another company that needs it? And we got one in the construction world, which I kind of showed you earlier. And then I was sitting there, and I was sitting at a Chick-fil-A. My friend who manages the Chick-fil-A walked up to me. He's like, hey, what are you guys doing? What are you talking about? I said, oh, well, we're talking about mapping course. He goes, oh, that's cool. And then I was talking about something else. And he said, you know what? We're having all these problems with our drive-through, and I just can't figure out how to get all these cars through here. And we want to see how the traffic flows. It backs up onto the street. And we're thinking about expanding this way. Or we're thinking about adding some new parking spaces over here and getting rid of this median, but we're just not sure how everything will fit in. He's like, do you think you could just fly your drone up there and take some video or something so I could just see how traffic is moving around? Well, since I understood how photogrammetry works, how mapping works, my friend who's a manager of Chick-fil-A, general manager of Chick-fil-A, he doesn't know any of this stuff, because why would he? He knows that drones can take pictures and video, and he thought of that. I said, you know what? If you wanted to, I could go up there and I could get an orthomosaic image of the entire parking lot, of the entire drive-through flow, of all your spaces, and then we can measure things out really accurately. We can see, hey, could you expand the drive-through this way, or could you connect off of this road, or how much room do you have over here? And I could put a report together for you, so you could see all these things, take it to the owner of the Chick-fil-A and Chick-fil-A corporate, and make some decisions based on all those scenarios and the information. He's like, oh my gosh, that would be awesome. So I went out there, did that job, and boom, he was happy, I was happy, and he never even knew about that until I proposed that as a potential solution. Another example is Root. He got a call from a company. They produce the power lines that are installed, so the coils that they use, the actual materials for the power line. And they said, hey, we've got tons of inventory. They come in these giant coils, and we have acres of property, and all these different types of coils are spread out in different places, and we don't know what inventory we have left, where it is, and how to move it around. So could you just get your drone in the air and just take pictures of our full lot so we can kind of plan and see where things are and make a plan for moving them around, organizing them, and getting them to the right customers? They said, because otherwise we're going to have to figure out another solution. And he said, well, sure. But without just saying, yeah, I can do that, he talked to him a little bit more and found out, oh, you know what? Your property's so big that even if I went to the max height of 400 feet, I wouldn't be able to see the whole property. And then if I went to the side and took a picture, from the side in so you could see it all, there's going to be things that are so far in the distance that it's not helpful, and you're not going to really know where things are and how much room you're clearing up. However, if you want, I can do this thing called an orthomosaic, or I can do mapping. What I can do is it gives you really accurate imagery of your entire area. You can zoom in, see really specifically. I can measure things. We can look at how many acres specifically of free space you have. I can tell you how much room you're going to clear up, and we can do this. And then I can go back and I can update it every month so you can see how much inventory you're using, where it's at, and it'll be really quick to update. And they're like, wow, that's awesome. And so he turned this job that normally they would charge for a couple aerial pictures, maybe $250, and he just educated them on, hey, here's how mapping could work. Is that something that you'd be interested in? Here's what you'd be able to do with it. He used his knowledge to educate, and they said, yeah, that'd be great. And that job turned into an $8,000 contract because he was coming back every few weeks, every month to get updates, tell them, hey, here's what types of inventory you have here. And, Root went above and beyond and was labeling the inventory for them, show them, hey, you have 2 acres over here, and if you move this, you'll free up this much space over here, and here's how much you've used, and was really helping them out in getting those insights to them. And with that knowledge, he was able to turn a $250 job into an $8,000 job. out. Another example is a blueberry farm came to Root and said, hey, can we just get some progress updates of how our crops are progressing? But through talking to them, Root was able to show them, hey, I can actually do mapping to look at vegetation health. Oh, you have irrigation leaks? I can get a thermal drone and we can show you where irrigation is leaking underground, right? Just being creative and thinking of all the other problems they might have that he could help with. And then boom, it led to a 2-year contract with this company doing regular flights for them and a lot more business than he was originally going to get. All this to say the 3 secrets. Number 1 was focus on big impact problems. Focus on problems where you're not going to compete on price because you are bringing solutions to problems that they have and that are not commodity based, that not anybody can do, right? You have specific skills. Number 2, focus on knowledge more than equipment. The more you know about how to solve problems and how specific techniques can help people, the more you can charge, the more business you're going to get versus just having good equipment. Number 3, make sure you're educating people. Selling is going to be educating. Educate people and the business will come because you're going to hear about one thing and you're going to show them a solution that's better fitted for them that will actually help them more, give them more revenue or cut their costs more. Because in the instance of Root with the electrical company, they were going to have to hire bucket trucks to go out there, rent them, lift them up, have people go and count inventory by hand, where they're going to have to pay multiple staff members, a truck driver, someone in the bucket, they're going to have to rent the equipment, all this stuff. Well, by Root saying, hey, listen, you're going to spend tens of thousands of dollars, maybe 50 grand doing all that other stuff. I can just do it for 8 and you don't even have to waste anybody's time. So you're actually saving them money and you're able to charge more. So it's a win-win situation. So all this to say, if you're going to try to become more marketable yourself, if you have a drone, right? If you are wanting to get into the drone space, if you work for one of these companies, maybe a construction company or a surveying company, and you want to make yourself more marketable, more valuable, in my opinion, the number one thing that you need to learn right now is how to do mapping and photogrammetry and some modeling. That with a drone puts you at such an advantage above other people. And the reason other people don't know how to do this is because it's more complicated than just running up, taking a couple pictures, and that's it, right? You have to know how to collect the data, some of the techniques and science behind it, how to use the software. There's a lot of pieces to it that aren't as obvious to someone as just like, oh, I'll take some pictures of this house and give them to this realtor, right? So the barrier to entry is a little bit higher from a knowledge perspective. But really, from what I've seen, it's the number one way to make yourself more valuable. And from research, you can go look at thedroneanalyst.com. They do big market studies, and it was the number one thing that led to the most 6-figure drone businesses was photogrammetry and mapping. So if you want to do this, if you're like, that sounds great, Dave, I want to put this to use in my business, I want to learn how to do this stuff. Really, you have 2 options. Number 1 is you go figure it out yourself. You can try to go ask some people, mess around with it, see if you can figure it out, kind of like Root did, spend several years getting up to speed in that industry and figuring out how that works. And for some people, that's an option. Or number 2, you could just take a big shortcut and learn from the people who have actually mastered it, who are having a ton of success with it right now, and you have boiled it down onto an easy to digest method on how to learn it and how to do that. If option number 1 is you, that's great. If option number 2 is what you want, I have something special that I wanted to tell you about. So we are introducing a very new course for us at Drone Launch Academy. And I mentioned that Root Patel had been working with us on a course. So we just finished one up not too long ago, and it is called Drone Mapping and Modeling Fundamentals. And here's a couple screenshots from the course. It teaches you literally everything you would need to know about the fundamentals of doing this, what Root does. Drone mapping and modeling. There's tons of stuff in here. Here are some screenshots. I teach in it. Root teaches in it. Here is the syllabus, and I'll go through some of this stuff really quickly just so you can see what we're learning. So we got the intro. We tell you all about photogrammetry, the industries that are using it, how it works, what it is. I talked very briefly about that today. Then we talk about data acquisition fundamentals, which that's when you go to collect the data with your drone. It's very important that you're doing that the right way. How do you know how much accuracy you need? How do you get accuracy? What equipment do you use? What types of pictures do you take? How much overlap do you need? What are the settings? What is ground sampling distance? All this stuff that you need to know. Absolute accuracy, relative accuracy. We dive into all that before you even ever go out. This is stuff you need to understand. Then we talk about understanding client needs. This is if you have a drone service business or if you're an employee, right? We talked about how important that is, and Root talks about his process for how he understands people so where he can maximize value. Then we talk about a mock project that we do. So we created a project so that as you're learning concepts in the course, you're immediately applying them inside of a real life project. This is a construction project, and you're going to be working with us with the data we're using to do all of it with us. So we talk about pre-flight planning, creating a flight plan and all the automated software that you're going to be using, accuracy, the different settings, the different options you're going to have. Then we're going to actually be on site flying and collecting all the pictures and all the data we need and how that works. You can see me up here doing that in this video here. Once we get all the data, then you got to come back and you have to process it. This is back on the computer working with software. So post-processing report, how to import it all, how to use the software, how to georeference it, all that good stuff. Then analyzing your data. Once you have fully processed information, you're going to do your analysis. What are you looking for? In our mock project, we're going to say, hey, listen, we're going to pretend we have a client or boss and they've asked us for these 4 things. We're going to figure out how to get that information, how to collect it, how to analyze it, process it, all that stuff, to where we get that report we can give them. When we go through, all right, our deliverables, what are we going to do? So we're measuring retention ponds, we're tagging dumpsters and their coordinates and locations for some EPA report, and we're getting the specific lot condition by lot number and how to do that and export that to a report. And then finally, we're going to do a full over-the-shoulder walkthrough of a completely new project. And it was that Chick-fil-A restaurant project I talk about with the parking lot specific deliverables of measuring, hey, what if we did the drive-through, built a new lane coming in this way? What if we expanded these parking spots and blew out this median? We'll do the full thing start to finish on planning that, flying it, processing, analyzing, creating that report, and delivering that to them. And actually, that guy used that report I gave him in an interview he had to become an owner of another Chick-fil-A. He's trying to show them, hey, listen, we're using data, we're forward thinking, we're using technology. So we were making him look good by giving him this report, and he took that report and showed it to some management above him to show that, hey, he was really trying to be forward thinking and do this. And so we're going to walk through that entire thing in this course. So if you're like, David, I don't know anything about drone mapping, but I'm very interested. This is what you need, this course. This really obvious graphic here, but hey, this is you before the course, right? Like, hey, how does this work, right? Like, how does all this work? I'm so confused. I don't know. Well, if you take the drone mapping and modeling fundamentals course, you will go to this. Hey, you'll feel confident and you'll feel ready to go out and land a drone mapping job. And when you get that job, you'll know exactly what to do and you'll feel confident, not like, oh my gosh, I'm just wasting this person's time. I'm a total fraud. No, you'll be like, hey, I've done this before. I've done other projects. I've got my certification from Drone Launch Academy. I feel good about doing this course. If you're looking at that, I'm going to answer some common questions we've gotten on the course, on photogrammetry, on all that stuff, right? So let's dive into some of those that you might have been thinking while we're going through this presentation. Number one, you're like, Dave, this sounds good. Sounds like a fair price, but what happens if I get in there and I decide, you know what, your course actually stinks? Even though you've got other people that have gone through it and you guys have good reviews and been doing this a while, what if I don't like it? What if I don't learn anything from it because you're just a guy on the internet? How do I know it's good? Well, we've got a guarantee. If you go through this course, if you go through it, you implement stuff and you show us, hey guys, look, I tried to do it. I was working on it and it's just not working, or I didn't learn anything. We will give you a no questions asked money back guarantee. So get in there, look around. We'll give you a full year to look around through there. And if you can show us, hey, listen, I went through the course and it's just not that good, we will give you your money back, no questions asked. We'll just look to see, hey, did they really go through the course? Yep, okay. And they didn't like it? No problem. We stand by our work. The last thing we want is an unhappy customer who's viewed our material. We'll take your feedback. We'll try to improve, but in the meantime, you'll get your money back. No problem. Full year to go through all the course material. I don't know who else is doing that. And also there's a guarantee for the Part 107 prep course. If you use our prep course, you pass your final exam inside of our course with at least an 80%, and then within a week, you go and actually take your real Part 107 exam and fail it, we will not only give you all your money back that you paid for the Part 107 prep course, we will refund all of your testing center fees that you paid. So as of me recording this, it's about $170 for testing center fees. We'll give you a refund on the Part 107 course. You can keep the course and all the extras, and we'll send you whatever you paid for your testing center fees. That way, it's risk-free to you and you're not out any money. We want to make this as easy as possible for you and as no-brainer, risk-free as possible. Another question, what if I live in a small town? What are the market like for drone mapping services? I'm not in a big city. That's a big one for people who are trying to do real estate, right? There's not a lot of real estate in my area. How do I get those jobs? Well, the thing with drone mapping is it actually lends itself pretty nicely to rural applications as well as applications that are in more populated areas. So there's a lot of forestry, there's a lot of agriculture applications. I know someone who was looking at rivers and watershed stuff and how different erosion things were happening. So they were monitoring that over time. And they worked with the state to do different projects on photogrammetry, right? So no matter where you are are, there can be some application of drone mapping, modeling. Another question we get is, hey, what kind of drone do I need to do this? So you really need any drone that takes at least 12 megapixel images. And now the Mini 2, there's a DJI Mini 2, I think that drone's like $400, $500. It'll take 12 megapixel images, and it's now compatible with softwares like DroneLink, which is a flight automation software. So even something like that you could do it with. Now, it needs to have a GPS capability because that's how it helps with the pictures being tagged and put together. So probably not like a $100 drone, but the Mini 2 on up, you should be able to do and practice mapping with. Another question I get is, how long do I have the course once I'm in there? Well, this is lifetime access. As long as you purchased it, you have it forever. You have all the videos, and as we do updates down the road and things get better, we will update that course, put it in there, and you have all those updates free of charge. And as we add more to it, make it more valuable, we'll probably increase the price. But again, you'll have that info free of charge since you already got in.